All right, guys, so we got to do a follow-up on a story that I talked about probably maybe a month or two ago about a student that took to the internet to complain about a teacher giving her a 0 on her assignment because she used biological facts in her essay, right? And again, the teacher did not like that very much.
There was a student at the University of Cincinnati. She was taking a class on gender studies, and when she handed a paper in, her professor failed her because she used an exclusionary term. Watch.
I got a 0 on a project proposal in my class because I used the term biological women, which is apparently not allowed anymore. She even said it was a good project proposal, but I got a 0 because I used this term and it's exclusionary and not allowed anymore, so. And I 100% know that this is like the most biased grade ever because my project is about transgenders competing in biological women's sports. How am I supposed to do my final project if I can't use the word biological women? But that's what my project is about.
Students writing a paper about men competing in women's sports, and a professor gave her a 0 because she's not allowed to use the word biological woman. Well, we reached out to the university, and they say they're looking into it. So what happened here? The student who was failed, Olivia Krolczyk, joins me now. So, Olivia, did the professor explain why you couldn't use the term biological woman?
Yes, she actually, through an exchange of emails, told me that using the term contributed to TERF ideology, so trans exclusionary radical feminism, which I believe is the only real feminism. And she said it was exclusionary and contributed to heteronormativity.
Okay, you said a lot of things that I didn't understand. Take me through this step by step. You're saying a paper in a college class that only this professor is going to read, you and the professor, just the fact that it's written and no one else has read it besides 2 people is going to offend the entire trans community?
Apparently, because in her syllabus it says I'm allowed to share my opinions as long as they don't cause harm to my classmates. But no one in my class was going to be reading my paper unless she was going to share it without my permission.
Are trans women or trans men actually offended by the phrase biological women?
Apparently so, and I did not know that.
Yeah, I don't think they are, and I'm just going to go out on a limb and speak for all trans men and women and say you're not offended by that phrase. Have you noticed this professor pushing ideology on the rest of the class?
Not that I've noticed. It's an online class, so I haven't noticed this, but I have had a situation previously in a class. In a discussion, I had said that it's not okay to generalize and say that all white men are privileged, and she came back and said that it is important to recognize that fact.
All white men are privileged. You can't argue with that, just because they're white men. Mm-hmm. I think some white men might argue differently.
I agree.
Have you taken this up with the dean?
You know what? I just met with someone this morning, and a new professor is grading my work, and a file is being sent to the dean, and they're going to look at it. I don't know if they're going to do anything, but we'll see.
So how have you been able to work around these restrictions? You're writing a paper. It's about men competing in women's sports, and you're not allowed to use the phrase biological women. How are you going to get around that, Olivia?
You know what? I spoke with someone in like the gender equity group at the school, and we pretty much discussed that I would do my project with the original proposal, and I just submitted it a few days ago with my original idea.
Oh, so you're saying the Gender Equity Council said even this professor's too cuckoo, and okay, good.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that, okay? You have a professor who's definitely an authoritarian, right, leftist, give this girl a 0 on an assignment simply because she used the term biological woman when discussing men and women competing against each other in sports. This is par for the course when it comes to the left, right? They hate free speech, okay? So now the University of Cincinnati has formally reprimanded this professor over that. So let's actually read about it because as you can see here, right, this is what the professor looks like. Is anybody surprised? Okay, is anybody surprised that this is the woke revolutionary that we're dealing with? Nobody should be. So let's read about it. A University of Cincinnati women's gender studies professor has been ordered to complete free speech training after she failed a student for referring to non-trans female athletes as biological women, according to a report. All right, so here's the thing. I agree. This professor definitely needs free speech training, but they should also be fired. Okay, they should be fired because the fact that this professor decided to grade based off her political ideology and whether or not people agree with her political ideology tells me that she's not qualified to be a professor, and I wouldn't trust her to grade anybody else's paper. She's already shown that she's willing to weaponize her position as a professor to punish students who disagree with her politically. She should be fired for this, okay? She should be fired because, I mean, clearly she's guilty, but you know, in my opinion, this is a slap on the wrist. Adjunct instructor Melanie Nipper was formally reprimanded for giving student Olivia Krolczyk 0 out of 20 points on her women's gender studies in pop culture final project for using what the teacher called the, quote, exclusionary term, the Cincinnati Enquirer reported. Guys, think about this, bruh. Think about this. There's a women's gender studies in pop culture class, right? They have a whole class on women's gender studies and pop culture. What is the ROI on this? Okay, what is the return on investment for this? Okay, what is it? Somebody tell me what's the return on investment for society. I don't understand. I really don't. I really don't. This is why college is so expensive. It's because you have classes like this. This teacher, let's keep 100. She should be employed, okay? Take out the fact that she's grading based off her politics. Take that out of it. Just based on the fact that this is the class that she's teaching, she shouldn't be employed, bro. We shouldn't have this, okay? This is ridiculous. Krolczyk took to Twitter in May to share her outrage and confusion in a video that went viral, prompted a response from the university weeks later. Quote, please note that this is to be considered a formal reprimand for your actions. A copy of this letter will be placed in your permanent records, the university told Nipper, according to the June 14th document obtained by the Enquirer. Quote, it is also understood that any other violations of UC policy may be subject to further disciplinary actions up to and including termination. You are reminded that as an unrepresented, unclassified, quote, at-will employee, your employment may be terminated with or without cause. Okay, so they're basically warning her that, hey, if you keep this up, then you're going to be fired. But again, I think that this professor should have been fired because clearly she's guilty. And again, who's to say how many other students have suffered because of this? Now, it's funny because think about this. If this was in any other context, right? Let's say that a professor was found guilty of using racial bias when it comes to grading black students in their work. Okay, he was giving black students lower grades because they're black, right? Do you think that the professor would give them a slap on the wrist with a little training course and give them a warning? No, that professor will be fired on the spot. Same thing should happen to this professor, but because this professor is woke, I'm assuming that they're getting a pass. In addition to completing training about UC's free speech policy, she must also submit her future syllabi for the upcoming school year for approval. In contesting the discipline, she wrote that her restriction on harmful speech was necessary to ensure a safe learning environment in the course and for the pedagogical purpose of teaching introductory WGSS theory, the newspaper reported. Yeah, so again, she's saying that her free speech restrictions, right? Her restrictions on free speech is necessary to teach this course, which is, again, ridiculous because as the student pointed out, only the professor would read the paper, right? The rest of the students in class wouldn't read the paper. So I'm not sure how this is harmful to other students, okay? Even if they heard it, it's still not harmful. But again, this is the argument that this professor made. The professor added that she, quote, felt it was necessary to educate her regarding inclusive language to ensure a safe learning environment for other students in the course discussion boards. She felt it necessary to brainwash the student, right, in her woke ideology. For a final project, Nipper asked her students to pick a topic related to feminism. Krolczyk chose to research the changes female athletes have experienced throughout history and the rights and opportunities they have been awarded and fought for in athletics. Yeah, typically you would think that in a women's studies course that this would be totally appropriate, right? This would be in the ballpark exactly what they're looking for, but not in this context, right? Not in the context when it comes to transgender folks. When they get involved, all of a sudden women's rights and issues goes out the window. Her project discussed topics from the first woman to compete in the Olympic Games to the fight that female athletes like Riley Gaines are making for proposed changes to Title IX. The chemistry major said her project ended by sharing how, quote, these rights and opportunities are being threatened by allowing men to compete in women's sports. Nipper told the sophomore that the term biological woman, which she used in her proposal, are not allowed in this course as they further reinforce heteronormality. Please reassess your topic and edit it to focus on women's rights, not just females, and I'll regrade, she wrote. Yo, this is beyond delusional, bruh. These are the people we got teaching kids in college, man. This is why college is so bloated and so expensive. How am I supposed to do my project if I can't use the term biological woman? Krolczyk question in her TikTok video. The reprimand was handed down by Ashley Curran, head of the Department of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies at UC, according to the Enquirer. Nipper responded June 19th with a request to appeal the sanction and was on campus on Thursday to discuss, the paper reported. She declined to comment, but said that the culture war has impacted educators' abilities to teach. Yeah. So again, the culture war has not impacted your ability to teach. Okay, you just don't like hearing opinions that you disagree with, right? In her case, you actually don't like hearing facts. You don't like hearing facts that you disagree with, okay? Because what she stated was that, hey, there are biological women, okay? And biological women are being discriminated against, and that is a fact. It's just so crazy how these professors, they let their political ideology get in the way of their actual jobs, and then they're given a slap on the wrist when they do this. When I think, personally, this university should fire this professor because this professor is probably prone to do this in the future, okay? Who's to say that the next student, she might not give him a 0. That might be too obvious that she's being biased. She might give him a lower grade. She might not necessarily grade them fairly because of her political bias. Again, if this was any other context, right, especially if it was race, if it was racial, this would be an automatic firing. That's exactly what it would be. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.